Around the world tonight into that troubling headline from Israel in the case of those three missing teenagers, one of them a U.S. citizen. Well, tonight, authorities believe those boys are now dead, found not far from where they disappeared. And this evening, a blistering salvo from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. ABC's Chief Global Affairs correspondent Martha Raddatz live in our Washington bureau tonight watching this closely. Martha, what's coming here?
David, the grief and outrage over these murders tonight in Israel is extraordinary. The boys' bodies were found under a pile of rocks in an open field. The three boys disappeared from a hitchhiking stop in the West Bank town of Hebron. Among them, that dual Israeli-American citizen, 16-year-old Naftali Frankel, whose family came to Israel from Brooklyn. The FBI joining the investigation tonight. The abductions prompted one of Israel's largest search and security operations in more than a decade. The Palestinian militant group Hamas was quickly blamed for the abductions. 400 Palestinians were arrested. Hamas denies any involvement, but tonight Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu saying they were abducted and murdered in cold blood by human animals. Hamas is responsible and Hamas will pay. And tonight, airstrikes are being reported in Gaza. These horrific murders have clearly dimmed any hopes for progress on a peace agreement in a country already on edge. David.
All right, just a horrible headline late today. Martha, thank you.
Certainly, as we've said many times throughout the course of the last several weeks, the kidnapping and, of course, any harm that has been done to these teenagers is a tragedy. We've been in close touch with the Israelis and the Palestinians over the course of the last several weeks.
Israel is vowing this morning to retaliate for the murder of three teenagers. Israel blames Hamas, and overnight, Israeli airstrikes hit 34 targets in Hamas-controlled territory on the Gaza Strip. But the government says the strikes are in response to a weekend rocket attack. The new offensive comes just a day after the bodies of those three missing students were found in a field on the West Bank. Alex Ortiz is in central Israel outside the home of the victim, who also happened to be a U.S. citizen. Alex, good morning.
Good morning. Well, here outside the house of Naftali Frankel, supporters and schoolmates have been gathered for weeks. Today, though, they're readying themselves to leave from here and go to his funeral. Israel's military was still deployed heavily throughout the West Bank this morning, searching high and low for two men suspected of killing Eyal Yifrak, Gilad Shar, and Naftali Frankel. Overnight, soldiers detonated explosives in a raid on one suspect's house in Hebron, a swift Israeli response following yesterday's grisly discovery. The bodies of the three teenagers who had been missing for over 2 weeks, removed from under a pile of rocks in an open field. It was exactly the news their families feared most. After weeks of praying for their safe return, Israelis gathered to hold vigils and mourning after hearing those prayers had not been answered. At an emergency cabinet meeting, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said Hamas is responsible and Hamas will pay. Though the Islamist group has distanced itself from the kidnappings and the killings, Hamas spokesman Sami Abu Zahri warned of further violence. If Israel uses aggression and escalation, he said, they will pay a price. Palestinians have already paid a price. In the last 2 weeks, Israelis have conducted a massive security operation, arresting hundreds and killing at least 6. And that crackdown is set to continue even as the Israelis bury their dead. Now, Prime Minister Netanyahu has said he intends to attend the funeral today of the three boys before later reconvening his cabinet.
Israel vows Hamas will pay the price for the murder of 3 teenagers, including an American. Meanwhile, Israel's military launched airstrikes overnight. pounding dozens of targets across Gaza after militants fired more than 20 rockets into southern Israel from the Palestinian territory. Welcome, everybody. Brand new tensions there as we start a brand new hour of America's Newsroom. Glad you're with us today. I'm Martha McCallum.
Hello, Martha, and hello, everyone. I'm Eric Shawn, in for Bill Hemmer this morning. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu expressing grief and the rage of his nation, offering condolences to the families of those teenagers. They were, unarmed kids, they say, just leaving school, kidnapped more than 2 weeks ago, and then murdered in cold blood. John Bolton, the former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations and a Fox News contributor, joins us now. Ambassador Bolton, Naftali Franco is 16 years old, an American citizen brutally murdered. What should we do?
Well, I think we should be working with the Israelis to strike a really strong blow against Hamas. The pattern that Israel has followed is that it responds in a kind of one-on-one answer to Hamas. Hamas fires rockets from the Gaza Strip into Israel. Israel attacks the places the rockets were launched from. Hamas kidnaps and kills 3 Israeli citizens, and Israel responds proportionally. And in large part, it does so because of pressure by the United States and Europe not to do anything more substantial. And I think that simply perpetuates Hamas's capability to commit exactly this kind of heinous crime. So I think the United States, instead of calling on Israel to exercise restraint here, as the State Department did yesterday, I think we should support a really strong response by Israel that goes right to Hamas's basic ability to carry out these kinds of strikes. Hamas is at war with Israel. This isn't a robbery or a kidnapping or a murder in the course of civil society. This is war, and Israel should be entitled to respond as if it were war, up to and including, if it chooses, destroying Hamas.
And you talk about destroying Hamas. How about what we can do in terms of the financial aid to the Palestinian Authority? I mean, Abbas criticizes the murders, yet at the same time on their website, apparently, of Fatah, they called these 3 kids rats. They called them soldiers. Soldiers? They were walking home from religious school.
Yeah. Well, I think we should have cut off all financial support to the Palestinian Authority years ago. This whole thing is a charade. The Palestinian Authority, Fatah, have no legitimacy whatever. They've demonstrated that their real interest is maintaining themselves in power. That's why they've been negotiating with Hamas to form a kind of coalition. This whole thing, this whole charade about trying to create a Palestinian state, I think needs to be discarded. I think we need to look at other ways of dealing with the problem of Israel and the Palestinians. But the idea that Hamas is not waging war on Israel, or that the Palestinian Authority is a logical alternative, a realistic alternative, I think is delusional.
And Ambassador, finally, what is so heartbreaking about this is Naftali Franco, the young 16-year-old dual American citizenship. He has family here in New York City, family that was lost in the Holocaust. And we see what's happening with ISIS. We see the creation of a supposed Islamic State. We see Iran on the march. We see these 3 murders. Are they winning?
Well, they're certainly moving ahead at this point, and I think they will continue to do so for the next 2.5 years, as long as the Obama administration continues to pursue the policies it's been pursuing for the past 5.5 years. This is why, in my view, we need a national debate about America's place in the world, how to handle threats like these terrorists, nuclear proliferation from Iran, North Korea, and a whole range of other issues. Right now, we don't have a national debate on foreign and defense policy. I think we suffer as a consequence. Our interests and our friends all around the world are suffering too, and it's only going to continue unless that changes.
Well, that debate may come 2016. Ambassador John Bolton, always good to see you. Thank you so much.